Hi, good morning. We're here with Sarah Venard from A-Foot Podiatrist. How are you doing, Sarah?
I'm good, thank you.
Good stuff. You're based in Hull, is that right?
Yep, the Hull and East Riding, but I have clients who come from around the country to visit me.
Brilliant. So just to kick things off, if you could give us a little bit more background as to who you are, what it is that you do, and then how long you've been doing it for, please.
So I was a secondary school teacher up until the age of 35. I had a degree in history and French, and experienced a psychopathic bully as a head teacher. So I stuck two fingers up at the teaching profession. I stuck two fingers up at my parents, and I sat with a huge piece of paper deciding what could I do that I was going to enjoy and I was passionate about. Mm-hmm. And I was a bit too old to be a porn star at 35. So then I started looking about, what do I love doing? Well, I like squeezing spots. I like scraping bits of hard skin off my feet. And I like medicine, I like psychology. I didn't want any stress, and I wanted to go home with a pocket full of money. So I spent about 3 weeks thinking of everything I loved, and bizarrely, it came to podiatry. And I'd always wanted to be a chiropodist when I was 13. So I phoned up my local podiatrist and I said, is it worth me doing a degree in podiatry, or shall I just be a foot health practitioner? And he said to me, I'm driving a Bentley. So I was sold. And then I went back to university at age 35 with no money. And I was a single mother with 3 children, a baby. And I got up every morning at 5 o'clock, travelled over to Huddersfield. It was totally out of my comfort zone because it was a science-based medical degree and I was a history and French graduate. But I absolutely loved it. I met some wonderful people. And I graduated in 2012, and I immediately set up my own business. But obviously, when you start up a business, you don't get a full caseload of patients. So I had to do a bit of supply podiatry work to begin with. And as my business grew and built, that's how I came to be fully self-employed about 4 years later. I did work as a musculoskeletal specialist podiatrist in the NHS for a number of years as well. And now I've had clients including professional football teams, industry leaders, professional rugby players, boxers, golfers, as well as your little old lady from a council estate who's suffering with her feet.
Brilliant. It's a great story there. Thank you for that. So we like to ask everyone that does an interview about the impact of COVID, just to understand, from different businesses' perspective, what the biggest impact was. What was the biggest impact for you in terms of business and how things affected it?
Initially, with it being medical, I think I had COVID at the start of when we had the lockdown, and I couldn't work because I was ill for about 3 weeks. But I think the key message from COVID was that you, as a business owner, you've got to watch the news, you've got to watch what's going on. So in December, we started to see the first casualties in Wuhan. And I was very surprised that the government hadn't blocked entry from Chinese to the UK. I was surprised that they hadn't contained Wuhan more and trains and planes were running. So I sort of made a mental picture in my head that the first case of COVID in the UK, I would stock up. And then shortly afterwards, I think the middle of January, we got our first case in New York. And with that, I was very cunning and I bought 6 months supply of aprons, gloves, masks, visors, goggles, all the equipment that I needed, because I knew if it was spreading airborne, everyone was going to get it. So the planning side of it, I was pretty much, I should have been in government really, I was pretty much the boss lady when it came to my provisions. But where my clinics are based, they're based in a residential care facility. It's an assisted living complex where there's probably 150 flats for people with mental and physical disabilities. And obviously when COVID hit, it was like a care home. Nobody was allowed in, nobody was allowed out. And for probably 6 months, I couldn't access my clinic.
Yeah.
So then I had to go fully home-based, and then it was all the problems of making sure that you're following the rules set out by the Royal College of Podiatry and the HCPC for safe practice. With being medical, I could literally get out working straight away, but we had to categorize patients in order of need. So it had to be urgent, they had to be, you know, medical workers, and our goal was to keep people out of hospital so that the nurses and doctors could focus on the COVID patients. So the first month of going out to work, I only had 1 day's worth of work a day, which paid for the mortgage. The second month, it paid for the bills. The third month sort of paid for your food, your bills, and a bit of going out. So it's really crucial that you have a backup fund, a contingency plan of readily available cash in case weird things like COVID ever occur again. And and then it was getting the message out to patients that I was open, but I was doing home visits, and I used Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and I basically pimped myself out as much as I possibly could.
Yeah, there's a lot of lessons, something you said there about, you know, having a buffer of cash or having contingency plans for anything like this happening again. Were there any sort of actions that you've taken from that experience that perhaps improved the business, or that you changed and stuck with because actually it gave you an opportunity to see something you perhaps wouldn't have known without that situation?
So as COVID developed, the message was coming fast and clear from my patients, new and old, the frustration that they couldn't get to talk to their GP. They were on the phone hours and hours and hours and hours, and they weren't getting anywhere. And it was a pretty critical point. So what I did was I invested in a portable ECG machine called CardioMobile. And when patients booked in, initially we thought that COVID was a respiratory disorder, but it's later been confirmed that it's a blood clotting disorder. So when I had new patients or existing patients, I did a vascular assessment. If I picked up something abnormal in their pulses on their foot, I could say to them, I've got an ECG machine here. It takes 30 seconds. Do you want me to run it through you? And literally it was 2 fingers like that pressed down. And if it reported atrial fibrillation or any abnormalities with their heart, I could then write to the GP. And in the medical field, the medical practitioner who's last seen the patient is responsible. So if I forwarded on my concerns about a heart issue, and then they have other issues like chest pain, feeling tired, breathlessness, and that GP doesn't act, then the GP is liable. And also what we found, so the patients absolutely loved me. It was a 5-minute, additional test. And, having to go to the post office to send a first class recorded delivery letter. But they finally got to the medical attention that they needed. And similarly with nail conditions, sometimes you can get a cancer into the nail growth that the GPs were just saying, oh, you've banged it. And, and when I was able to have a proper look, and obviously my consultations usually take an hour for the first one, an hour and a half for a biomechanical assessment. We get a lot of information from our patients that we can then feed into the GP. So the extra service I give is that if I spot something, I don't necessarily frighten the patients, but I say it'd be worth getting it checked out. The patients love it.
You can help fast track the care that's needed.
Well, unfortunately, in the NHS, you have to know the buzzwords, and you have to play the game. And So I had a gentleman waiting for months for a bilateral hip replacement, and he came to see me, and he was looking very, very down and depressed. And I said to him, "What's the problem with your what's up today?" And he was saying, "I'm in excruciating pain with my hips. I can't cope with it anymore." So again, I wrote to the GP, and I spoke to the patient. I said, "Look, you might be able to have this operation under local anaesthetic, which is less risky." And a lot of the surgeons are looking at KPIs, so they don't want their patients dying when they've done an operation, because it affects their performance levels. I said, if you had a local anaesthetic and put your headphones on and listen to music, they may be more willing, and you offer to have a short notice cancellation, they may be more willing to get you in quicker. So I wrote to the GP, said that he was seriously depressed and down and couldn't cope. And literally the GP got the letter, phoned him the next Friday, and the following Tuesday he was having a hip replaced.
Excellent. What a top level of service you're giving to your, to your customers.
You have to try. I try and treat my patients like my family members.
Yeah, fantastic. Oh, I like that. That's a good share. Treat your customers like family. There we go. So what does the future look like for you? What do you see as the main challenges going ahead in your business?
So I'm 51, and I shouldn't say that after talking to David Kilburn of MKM, but there aren't many podiatrists coming through being podiatrists. So recruitment, if you were going to expand, is very, very difficult. And I don't believe in paying peanuts. I'd rather pay more and have a premium service maintained. But it's finding that quality and the caliber of staff. And also, at the moment, the government isn't making employing people very attractive for business owners. So before, you could get a locum podiatrist to work 1 day a week for you, and they would invoice you, see your patients, and it could be quite casual. Now you have to employ them with pensions and holiday pay, and it just doesn't make it quite as attractive. And with the economic uncertainty caused by Liz Truss, Paddy Cartain, and Putin's invasion of Ukraine, and the cost of living crisis, you know, I'm lucky because I'm full, but I'm not as full as I used to be, if that makes sense. And I'm having to advertise a lot more and be seen more online.
Yeah.
So that's one of the problems. But again, with COVID, we don't know how it's going to progress. You know, everyone thinks it's over, but you never know. You could have a new variant and we're back to square one again. So I always sort of try and think worst case scenario. I always have my contingency stash of money. And I'm looking now at doing online consultations as I'm getting older and more decrepit, because then I've got a worldwide market. So I'm not just, you know, concentrating on Hull and East Riding. I can go to the field. So I'm looking at the artificial intelligences that are coming through, like the GPT, and seeing how it goes, really.
Brilliant. I like that in terms of, you know, looking ahead and trying to control the controllables of what you can do and how you can navigate the market that it is now, especially with AI, and looking at those kind of things and embracing that as opposed to fearing it and seeing what opportunities there are. Thank you for that. So in terms of moving on to yourself as a business owner and sharing a lesson, the biggest lesson that you've learned along the way, is there one that stands out for you that you can share?
I think just you're working for probably 50 odd years, and although I was good at teaching, it wasn't my passion. And feet, as mad as it seems, I get a buzz out of it's maybe a bit egocentrical, but I get a buzz out of fixing feet, and it pays well. It challenges me. I'm in control of the times I work, so it has this ikigai factor where everything for me, podiatry and my business, everything, I couldn't be happier doing what I do. But so follow your passion, and then don't try to please your family, or and sometimes you have to stick two fingers up at your family, because I wanted to be a podiatrist at 13, and I chose chemistry and biology and German, and my dad said, I want you to be the first wood in the family with a GCSE in physics. Well, it screwed up all my GCSEs then, because I was a daddy's girl. I tried to my dad, I couldn't do chemistry and biology, and I had to do French. So, but then at 35, like I said, I stuck two fingers up at teaching, I stuck two fingers up at my parents, and I decided it was my life and I'm going to do what I want to do. And if I mess up, then it's my problem, but I haven't messed up so far, and I absolutely love what I do. So that's the first thing. And then the other top tip I would give is, whenever you make any money, set up an online banking system with different accounts, and call one of them tax, and put 50% of anything you earn straight away when that money comes in the tax account. Otherwise, in January, you're eating egg and chips for a month and you're panicking, oh God, I forgot I had my tax bill to pay. And there was a very good book called Profit First by Mike Michalowicz, I think he's called, that was absolutely business changing for me, because I used to live on the scraps of my business. Even though it was doing well, I'd be spending so much money on my business so I could tax deduct it, that I never really had a wage. And with Profit First, what they tell you to do is, whatever your business earns, you take 50% of that as your salary, and that's your money to keep. 15% goes in the tax account, 30% goes in your operating expenses, so your business costs, advertising, and then 5% goes in your profit. It starts off as pounds and pennies in the beginning of the profit account. But then suddenly, by the third quarter, you're affording a nice weekend break in Paris. And every quarter, what they recommend that you do is you take half of the profit amount out and you treat yourself fully on treating yourself. And then that half builds up again. And then the next quarter, you get a bigger profit. And you get a decent wage that way. You get the treats and rewards for being a business owner. And you keep your operating expenses under control. Brilliant.
Yeah, I have heard of that book. Someone was talking to me recently about it, about how they were being recommended it, and it sounds, like a really good way to live the life that you sort of want to live by going into business, if that makes sense, rather than going into business then realizing, oh, I haven't got all the things that I wanted when I set out. So financially, that's great advice and a great lesson. Thank you very much.
Okay.
So, what would be the best advice? I mean, you kind of touched on it there as well, in terms of offering some advice about the financial side of things. But someone starting out in business, perhaps a younger person, you at 18, if there's a piece of advice, life advice, maybe business advice that you could offer, with your experience and knowledge that you have to date when starting out, what would that be?
Well, I think you just have to follow your passion and decide what you're passionate about, because if you're passionate about something, you never work a day in your life. And then I think you haven't to be hung up that you haven't got the right GCSEs or A-levels or degrees, because I have no science background apart from a GCSE in physics. And I went on and did a medical degree, a Bachelor of Science, and did well. And I always say to my son, it doesn't matter if you're a window cleaner, but if you're the best window cleaner and you provide the best service, you can charge premium prices. And that's what I aim to do. So my goal for my life as a podiatrist is to be the England team football podiatrist. It was the Queen's podiatrist, but I don't think that boat has passed now. But it's always setting myself extreme goals, and then breaking it down into little tasks how I can get there. So when I got the Hull City gag, I found out pretty quickly that I could do a FIFA diploma in sports medicine at a postgraduate. And so every day when my partner was watching telly, I'd be on my iPad completing, 1,000 hours worth of courses to improve my knowledge of football medicine. And then I got my qualification. So, no one can take that qualification away from you. And you've just got to, you can't eat a whole elephant, you can only eat little chunks, can't you? And you've just got to start eating the little chunks. And sometimes you have to put yourself in a situation where failure is not an option. So when I had 3 children, I was a single mother. If it didn't work out, we didn't eat, or we did, to tell the truth. And this is another really good piece of advice. So up until the age of 30, well, a bit longer than that, but at 35, I was still renting a property. And when I gave up a lucrative salary as a teacher to start again, I was crapping my pants because I didn't know how I was going to be able to afford to pay for my kids. And it was like a miracle. So I had £400 a month from my ex-husband who paid maintenance. That was disregarded as income. I got on my podiatry course. I got a bursary of £1,200 a month. Bursaries are not classed as income. So I had no income officially. So the government paid my housing benefits £600. They paid my council tax. The kids got free school dinners. We got free bikes. We got free computers. All our school trips were free. I got my transport to Huddersfield paid. I got my creche paid for my baby, which was fantastic. And then on top of that, because I wasn't working, I was a single mother, I got full enhanced family allowance, and I got working tax credits for children. And the bizarre thing was I was killing myself as a teacher working 80 hours a week. And when I gave up teaching to be a podiatrist, I was £1,000 better off a month being a student than when I was a teacher. And it was, so the key is you've got to be single, you've got to have kids, and you happen to own a house. But, you can use the system to benefit you. And then when I graduated, I didn't get much help from anybody to start up my business. I asked my mum for 300 quid and she point blank refused. My dad said to me, I want a business plan, and then I want 10% of all your future earnings. So I went, so I had 70 quid. So I bought 4 sets of instruments, and I bought, the minimum amount of clinical gear that I could get. I put 20p adverts up in the post offices, and it started off, I got 2 patients a week, which at the time was about 70 quid. But after those first 2 patients, I was ringing the bell of profit, because I set up with 70 quid. Yeah. And then straight away, it was a profit, wasn't it?
Well, quite often when you have no option, as in plan B, and you have to make it work, and you have to start out with whatever it is that you've got, having not a lot to start with teaches you some great lessons to, when it does start to take off, you still have those lessons and the way to run a business that is keeping it profitable and keeping it tight. And it's not a bad way to start at all.
And the other beautiful thing was, after I finished my degree, so I had my 2 patients, and this went on for about 2 weeks, and then I was really, really skinned, because I was thinking, God, we were living off pasta. And I phoned up Housing Benefit, and they said to me, until your profit is £12,000 a year, then you don't have to pay any housing benefit, and you'll get free council tax, and you'll have all the benefits of when you were a student. Now, most businesses can put through and tax deduct 30, 40 grand's worth of costs through their business. So it gives you chance to build up your business and you're still getting, this time I didn't get child tax credits, I got working family tax credits, so that was £250 a week. So I couldn't really fail if I put the effort and the time in to build up my help of the government. So
well, it's a great story of having that support there from the government, and then being able to build something off the back of that, which, you know, is great, which I think fundamentally that's what it's there for in a large part, or, you know, it's there as part of that in order to help people to get on, but be there when they need it.
Yeah.
So that's great. Thank you very much for sharing that. So lastly, in terms of your business, is there any latest news you'd like to share, or even it's just pointing us in the right direction of a website to be able to find where you are and how we can get in touch?
So I'm a musculoskeletal specialist podiatrist, and I can assess, diagnose, treat all conditions of the foot and ankle. But I specialise in biomechanics and foot pain related to bones, tendon, ligaments, fascia. So you'll hear commonly people having Achilles problems, antifasciitis, metatarsalgia. But what I do is I give them a very, very detailed examination. They get a full diagnosis, and often what they come in for, they have far more serious things occurring on their foot that they didn't know about. I'm pretty good at fixing feet, and what I say to my patients is that if I can't fix them, I can guarantee that I can get them to the right person who hopefully can. And you know, that's a great selling point. So if you'd like any more information, I'm on www.podiatryhub.com. And I will in the future be looking at implementing an online consultation service.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Sarah. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, and I wish you all the best with the business.
Thank you.